Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about how over 1,000 Portland area shelter beds are closing before the end of the year and what that means to our mayor's efforts to end unsheltered homelessness, why a leading psilocybin therapy center is also closing for treatment. Plus, we're weighing in on Portland's pettiest gripes in a new segment that I'm calling We Live in a Society. With me are Oregonian homelessness reporter Lillian Mongeau Hughes and Willamette Week reporter and author Brianna Wheeler. Thanks so much for hanging out, you guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Lillian, how was your vacation?
It was amazing. British Columbia, high recommend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Victoria. You can get there kind of in a car if you're willing to put your car in a boat. It was great.
I love Victoria. I've only been there for like a handful of hours, but I had that thought where I was like, I could live here. Like, it was just so cute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, as most of our listeners know, before we jump into the news, I ask our guests an opening question to kick things off. But on Thursdays, that opening question is only available to our CityCast Portland neighbors as a bonus segment to thank them for their continued support. We couldn't keep this podcast afloat without them. But if you too want full access to all of our opening questions, plus access to our ad-free feed and invites to member-only events, go to membership.citycast.fm. We do add an additional segment to the show, though, on Thursdays, though, so everyone gets a little extra something because we do love you all. My opening question is about Portland Fire and Rescue's new online portal for reporting fireworks, something I want everyone to know about. So I'm going to put a link to it in our show notes. Well, on to the news. Lillian, you're talking through some reporting you did about upcoming homeless shelter bed closures and what it all means. Lay it on us.
Yeah, so there's going to be over, I think it's more than 1,100, so 1,100 shelter beds closing before the end of the year this year. These are closures across the systems. You mentioned Mayor Wilson in the opening. Mayor Keith Wilson has, of course, famously made it a campaign promise to open a whole bunch of homeless shelter beds. Almost the same number that he promised to open are closing. It is important to note, however, yes, though it is very important to note that about 3/4 of the ones that are closing are actually funded by the county and had been open for a long, some period of time before Mayor Wilson came on. So it is not that all of the shelter beds he opened are closing, even though the number is similar. For the new overnight-only shelters that Mayor Wilson opened, which was around 1,000, depending on how you count things, between 1,000 and 1,500 beds. Anyway, of those, about 300 are closing.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yowza.
I mean, at the most basic level, it means there will be 1,000 fewer beds for people who are homeless to sleep in.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not nothing because the population of people who are homeless in Portland has grown significantly in the last year. It's continuing on an upward trajectory, and given that we're likely to lose some federal funding this year, the chance that population suddenly starts going down is low. So the number of shelter beds have gone down. The number of people who are homeless continues, it's as far as we can tell, to be going up. So it's going to be a bigger gap. There's going to be fewer safe places for people to sleep who don't have, permanent housing.
What is the mayor saying? Like, because there's no way that this makes him look good. And the whole reason he forced so many, I say forced because it was a lot of forcing. So many shelters to open was because he had this ambition, he had this goal, and everybody was like, all right, let's see if it works, So what does this all mean for him?
These are interesting questions because I've been so focused on, honestly, the county because more beds are closing there. They had more programs. Their programs were 24-hour programs. So that means someone who had a bed at a 24-hour shelter has an assigned bed with a storage locker and they can stay there and kind of stabilize for some period of time. That's really different than the overnight beds that the mayor was interested in opening and some of which are now closing because they didn't have that same potential effect. I think one of the most important things, and this isn't exactly answering your question about what the mayor saying, so far the mayor hasn't said too much other than we would love to keep these open, but money says we can't, right? Which is kind of the line. What's interesting at the county, which again controls overall much more of the homeless services provided in our area, including shelter. What they're saying is obvious. They're starting with, we wish we weren't closing shelters. This stinks, right? There's people who are using these shelters who now won't be able to use them. But they're also saying, look, we have done reporting, and this is true, I covered this, that shows that the shelters by themselves aren't actually that great at getting people into housing. So here's one of those like kind of Captain Obvious findings in an official report. But it turns out that the shelters who have money to place people into housing do a better job placing people into housing. Like, not a shocker, really.
That is a shock, though.
Part of what the county is arguing is that though this is being fueled primarily by cuts, they are also making some adjustments to, they say, right size the system so that for pretty much everyone going into a shelter bed, there is at least some amount of funding available to then place them into housing. So their argument is, and their proposal is like, by the end of the year, we will have done a better job having people move through shelter into housing than we're doing right now. So in fiscal year 2025, I think 16% of people who stayed in a shelter moved into permanent housing after that shelter. They'd like to ratchet that up quite a bit. I haven't seen a specific goal number, but they're trying to bring that up. Anyway, the idea is the system will work better overall. And so even though there are fewer beds, more people will use those beds and get through them and get to permanent housing, which is the only thing that will actually bring homelessness down, right? Staying in a shelter doesn't take you out of the homelessness count and doesn't solve your homelessness.
Yeah. So the county is reframing this as like, this is a reset, like a much needed reset for our funding and for our strategy to end homelessness, not just unsheltered homelessness, but just homelessness, full stop.
That is their very hopeful framing, yes.
What's the story about like these overnight shelters? Like, is it tenuous to stay there? Is there a danger to stay there? I mean, I realize that people are coming and going at such a rapid clip, and it's not a solution by any means. So like, what would a person experience who goes to an overnight shelter?
It's a great question. I've heard a very wide range of reports, both from people who stay there and people who work there. I think that there have been incidents of violence at some of these shelters. We know that like at one of the new overnight shelters in North Portland, there was like an increase in 911 calls from when the shelter went in to kind of the end of the year. And some of those calls were certainly coming from the shelter. So there have been incidents, but they also, like that shelter says, like, well, we've remediated that and it's not as bad anymore. I have to go back and look at calls again. I think that most people I talk to have said, yeah, it's a perfectly fine place to sleep, but it doesn't solve any of my problems. Like you can't meet a housing coordinator there. Like there's no additional connections to somebody who's going to help me do more than just have one safe place to sleep. So on a super cold and rainy night, like the benefit's obvious. Right. On a less cold and rainy night, less obvious. And so those shelters are getting, in the winter months, they were pretty full. In the summer months, not so much.
Right.
And I know this is all county, but is the city at all closing any of their shelters? Do we know? I mean, I'm assuming so.
Yes. So the city is closing. So both the city and county are closing shelters. There's shelters and then there's beds, which, are two different things. I'm a little more up on the beds. So the city is doing this complicated thing where they're closing 300 of the overnight only beds, but some of them are moving into what they call their flex beds. So they're trying to continue to count flex beds. In the story I wrote, if you go to OregonLive.com, we just kind of kept the flex beds out of it. There's one paragraph describing what they are, but like the city's been wanting to use that count to make it look like they're not closing as many beds as we're kind of saying they are, because we're counting like what we would call permanent beds. So beds that are open tonight that you could go to, as opposed to beds that might be available in the case of an emergency if we decide to make it, operationalize it that night. Right. The other thing that they're doing is they're closing two, what they term alternative shelters, but like sleeping pod shelters. But they're moving most of those pods into the North Portland Road shelter, which is actually originally started as like an RV safe parking spot. And interestingly, they're getting rid of the RV part. So North Portland Road currently has 91 parking spots for RVs. That's going to be gone. And I believe when that's gone, there's not going to be safe RV parking in the city. I think that'll be the end of it.
Because we were seeing less RV camps in the streets, which was great.
Well, and specifically out along 33rd, that it got really bad, right? And then that's very close to where North Portland Road is located. And so those RV spots are going to be gone, and they're going to have pods instead. I mean, Mayor Wilson closed an RV safe parking spot earlier this year as well, Sunderland, which was also out in North Portland. So there's been a real push from this mayor to not have, RVs.
What's the impetus to remove the RV and replace it with pods? What's the point?
To be super honest with you, I have not gotten like a straight enough answer on that I don't really, and this isn't like, I'm not saying this is like a value statement. I just really don't quite understand what the impetus is.
That's your next story. There you go. Thank you, Brianna.
I mean, we have done some reporting on RVs if you want to see what we've discovered, but it's a little unclear to me why you would take away someone's RV when it was parked legally and safely inside a shelter. I just don't really know. I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for looking into the shelters closing in the county. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Brianna is breaking down the dissolution of Intertrek, one of the city's largest psilocybin service centers. Freem Family Brewers keeps winning gold awards at the most prestigious beer competitions for everything ranging from its lagers to its IPAs to its sour ales. And beyond their brewing skills, their kitchen is not slacking. They have menu items you don't normally see at other gastropubs like Yamatsuki cabbage, Mediterranean clams, or gochujang wings. Not to mention plenty of seasonal veggie options along with all your kids' favorites as well as other standard fare. And if beer isn't really your thing, they also have signature cocktails ready on draft. If you haven't gotten a chance, go check out their Milwaukee location. They have an outdoor patio perfect for enjoying a summer drink with live music every Tuesday. To check out their full tap list, menu, and events listings, go to freembeer.com. That's PFRIEM beer.com, or pop in at 10722 Southeast Main Street in Milwaukee.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, Brianna, I know cannabis is usually your beat, but you brought us this story. I feel like this is the first time in a long time that I've heard about psilocybin service centers. I feel like a couple years ago, we were all over it, and then like crickets.
Right. We were really talking it up. And there is a lot of crossover in cannabis and the psilocybin spaces. And you see a lot of, like, as I was going through this story, I was like, oh my God, I know a lot of these people because we've all been existing in these kind of that decriminalized margin. But today I'm talking about some reporting by Andrew Schwartz over at Willamette about, like you said, Intertrek is letting its lease expire on its Central East Side operation. And it's going to lean into training as opposed to providing that physical space to go and have your big healing trip. And I feel like this is news because that felt like the reason for this legislation was not just to train facilitators and not just to be like, yay, mushrooms are decriminalized now, but to actually provide these healing spaces and to kind of change the way that we're looking at mental health. Like it was supposed to be this big sea change. And like you just said, we kind of stopped talking about it. Everything just kind of into the wind. Right. So Intertrek operated for 3 years out of this big Central East Side tower. They facilitated thousands of psychedelic sessions. They're for veterans, for women's groups, and they're also working with trainees. So that's their jam. Intertrek is run by Tom Eckert, who, with his therapist wife, was like essentially the architect of the legislation that defined Oregon's psychedelic program, which is kind of wild and pretty cool. And so it really says something. We're at a very critical time now because the guy who literally wrote the legislation is saying, yeah, I'm just not really feeling like the spaces aren't as vital as the training. We want to lean into the training because we want to educate cohorts around the country. This is happening at like I said, it's a very critical time in the psychedelic landscape because of all of the things that this administration is pushing on us and ramming down our throats and ruining our lives about. I guess they're really kind of okay with drugs somehow, like the therapeutic benefits of drugs. And states like New Mexico, Colorado decriminalized Santa Cruz, decriminalized. DC, decriminalized. Oregon, legalized. Oregon went that next step, right? So this is already a trailblazing legislation. So it really means something that the person who wrote it is like, nah, we're pivoting. We're pivoting now.
But it's more of a financial thing, right? It's not really like an ethical, I'm assuming.
Well, exactly. Like, I don't want to be super assumey about it because I feel like in the interview, there's a lot of talking around what's going on. And put a pin in that for a moment. So the Intertrek operations director is Lisa Snyder, and she's also huge in the cannabis cipher, right? And she says that the central location appeals to a trainee cohort. These trainees are coming from everywhere. And because of that, it just makes sense to lean into education harder, which doesn't require that physical space. They run virtual classes remotely. They hold a few in-person weekend intensives in Lake Oswego. And then maybe facilitators can get actual experience by leading psychedelic trips all the way out in Golden, Colorado. And this is all facilitated through Intertrek. But they're not going to have a physical service center of their own.
Is that going to affect the number of people who come here for those trips? I felt like that was like this burgeoning Portland tourism thing.
Now we're taking the pin out because, yes, Oregon was the only place. Like, all of these other places had decriminalized, but you could come to Oregon and have the guided trip. So this is a big shift. This is a really big shift. So these facilitators, I guess there's 20 or so in the Oregon database. They do face heavy regulations, and they receive little to no support from groups like Travel Oregon and Travel Portland, which we have talked about how they be running their money at Travel Oregon. But they don't want anything to do with psilocybin, which is wild because I've written cannabis articles for Travel Oregon. So they were down then. Well, they're not down now. But Lisa Snyder, she says the dynamic here is it's simpler. Their lease is done. And this is her quote: "Imagine hosting thousands of psilocybin journeys for hours at a time. At some point, you're just going to be like, I'm tapped out. I'm going to tap someone else in."
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't appeal to me. Sorry.
It's a little like, I don't know.
Lillian's like, there's no snitching. I'm out.
I'm just going to like watch people trip. Like, I'm not into it. But I mean, look, to each their own. Yeah.
That's a callback to our opening question, y'all. If everyone's like, why are they talking about snitching? Just membership.citycast.fm.
So across the board, we've kind of seen this model of psilocybin therapeutic revolution. It's just kind of dwindling. And I say that because remember the Portland Shroom House that operated for a couple of months in 2022?
Yeah, that was insane.
Just kind of skirting
Lillian, do you remember this?
Around.
You guys.
It was like kind of post-pandemic. They even had a billboard. They were just selling freaking mushrooms, like psychedelic mushrooms to anyone. Like it was just legal, which is not, by the way, guys, if you're listening, you're like, oh, it's legal. No, you can't just go up to you can't just buy psychedelic, but you can buy psychedelic mushrooms through a therapeutic service center that has been regulated to hell, that has to pay for licenses, which is why so many are closing. Let's be clear. Whatever Lisa says is that a lot of them are just like, ooh, there's not a lot of money in here, but pyramid scheme. This is, again, Claudia Corner, Conspiracy Corner. What if I made you, though? But you can start your own center. You can become a therapeutic psilocybin, licensed professional.
Right.
And I think there's more money there now.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking. If you're wondering, that's my theory here.
Because different markets, whereas Oregon was the only place to trip, that's not true anymore. You can go to Denver and trip your balls off. You can go to Santa Cruz. You can go to all these different places that are establishing these models based on what we did because we trailblazed, right? Shroom House.
Squeeze the business out of it. Sorry, Brianna. Go on. Which is what we do. Which is what Oregon does. We squeeze the business sense out of it. That was my Republican thoughts. Go on.
No, I rebuke it.
Like an exorcist, I rebuke it. Go on.
I rebuke it. So arguably, I guess in my opinion, I thought that Sanctum, which operated out of a brick and mortar on Milwaukee, and they had like the Sanctum thrift store, which funded their therapeutic space. So I talked to the owners, I don't know, like 2022, 2023, and was absolutely like, they glamored me. Because when you talk to somebody who's just so down for it, when they're speaking from their true passion, and it isn't about money, it is about the thing. That was the vibe that I got from them. they're doing great. They were doing great, doing wonderful. Their lease comes up and their landlord is like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful. Let's jack that rent up a few thousand.
That's what they do.
That's why they closed. They have since moved to the Haven where they're still able to do like they do lectures and meetups and things of that nature. But they lost this flagship space because of business bullshit, because they're getting squeezed out because of business bullshit, because business interests see this and they see dollar signs. Now, it really begs the question, like, Homeboy wrote the legislation for this. If anybody should be down to clown, it should be him. So how did we get to this point where the architect got squeezed out? I feel like that's the central question.
What happened to the mushroom house? You brought up the mushroom house, and then I took us on a whole... So what happened?
Yeah, they got shut down. They got raided, straight up raided. Like pounds and pounds of mushrooms confiscated. And then the guy who led it he was arrested. But I think when it all came back down to it, he didn't do jail time or anything like that, but he was ordered to pay restitution to the employees that like lost out on the money that they would have made while the shop was closed. I think that was, fact check me, listeners, but is that wild? So even the courts in Oregon were like, damn, this is fucked. This is so stupid. This is mad stupid. What are we doing? I'm just illustrating like how these weird, wild turns that we've made. At first, we're like, yeah, it's decriminalized, it's legalized, it's a therapeutic, but the outline of it was so vague, you know? I guess the owner of a mushroom house was like, hey, let's make this less vague. I'm going to open up a shop. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
I've been paying less attention to this, obviously, than you, Brianna, but like, isn't it all about money? Wasn't the cannabis about money? Like, all of this is a way to make money. That's the whole reason to legalize.
Well, it depends on who you ask. It really does. Because I'm telling you, I'm having these conversations with the people at Open Sanctum, and I was like, oh, I'm joining your church now.
Yeah. But don't you think that they're lying?
No.
No.
No, man.
I don't know those people. I don't mean to accuse them of lying. I just
But also in the cannabis space too, early in cannabis legalization, you saw a lot of women owners, a lot of women founders. And those women founders were so because they had found their healing power through cannabis.
So true believers.
Money came through. Most of the women-led and owned businesses have since been shuttered since like that founders boom that did see a lot of female ownership. Now we see like, if corporate weed came and took over.
I guess it just doesn't surprise me. Maybe I'm like too pessimistic.
I'm trying not to get jaded because I love drugs.
You know what? I love that for you.
Shade.
Yeah.
No, I hope you never get jaded, man. You can stay in reporting and not be jaded. Like, you've won.
Arts and culture.
Yeah.
Arts and culture.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brianna, so much for looking into that. I have a feeling that's not the end of that. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, I'm going to be sharing Portlanders' biggest gripes of the week. So in the spirit of Am I the Asshole? I don't know if you guys know this. It's kind of like a subthread in Reddit where people put in their like scenario, and at the end, all the comments are basically figuring out if that person is the asshole of that situation. You know, usually
almost always yes.
Yes, they always are. Yeah.
Experience.
Well, Portlanders, if you go to Reddit Portland, we have this really, I find it so charming. Every week, there is a weekly thread rant. And in all caps, Portlanders are encouraged to just do and it could be as personal as like, I'm a barista and my shot didn't pull and I was pulling water for fucking 10 minutes and I didn't notice. It could be as simple as that, but it can get really specific. So I'm going to go through some of these, and then we, as a council, are going to judge if they are in the right for the rant, even though this is, a judge-free zone for theirs. It's not here. And we're going to decide, are they the asshole? Okay, here we go. This is roadkill etiquette. Minute Mud 3630 wrote, how can a city the size of Portland not have a service to pick up rotting wildlife corpses off the sidewalk? I called the city service number and they told me that they no longer do that, and to put the 30-pound, 2-day dead opossum into 3 plastic bags and into my trash. It was 92 degrees and my trash isn't picked up for 11 days. I'm not out here trying to relive a apocalypse now for my barbecue guests in Portland.
Whoa.
I'm not the asshole. Not the asshole.
Not the asshole? What do you guys think
he's
of
not
that?
the asshole. I'm actually really surprised because there is a contractor called Rapid Response that the city of Portland works with that is famous for helping with clearing tents at outdoor homeless camps, but also is on the hook for doing things like clearing poop off the streets, which I happen to also know from my reporting. If you want to know more about poop, you've come to the right place. But side note, all biological waste, including, I believe, dead possums would be in this category that, like, you're not really supposed to touch, would be part of this, like, sort of toxic waste that Rapid Response is supposed to clear. So I'm wondering now, like, did that contract get trimmed? Did I misunderstand the difference between poop and opossums? I'm not sure. But, like, I thought they did have a service for that. So I'm baffled.
No, I'm on the side of the Redditor. I think that the city of Portland is the asshole because, like, what do you mean you're not going to freaking clean up roadkill? That is like a basic to me. I'm just like, that's a city. We're paying taxes and someone's paying
I don't know
property
that I expect
taxes,
them
right?
to come around and pick up like squirrels or like, you know, a rat that got
But if
run
you
over.
call
But like
in.
a 30-pound
That's
opossum.
bigger than a newborn baby. That's
It
like
is.
3
Yeah, like
newborn babies.
what if it was a
Do
coyote?
not give me that visual.
What, the baby? I'm skipping over the baby. That was dark.
That was Brianna.
What if it was a like juvenile coyote? You know what I mean? There's a lot of those in Portland. What if it was a
At a certain point,
so I don't
you
know.
just
I
like
guess
bury it, give it a funeral. But yeah, that's messed up. I think we're all in agreement there. Here's another one, guys. Driving etiquette. It's a comment by Buffoonery. Pull up to the fucking line at the stoplight. Why do people leave so much room in front of them? Some ding dong sat there, not triggering the sensor. What do you think of that?
I fucking hate that. I get it because I know that people do that to like make room for bicyclists, and I am a bicyclist, so like, but also like get on that sensor, dude. Get on that fucking. Oh my god, I need to calm down. That shit got me.
I know what your thing is, Lillian. What about you? You're very quiet. Are you parking a block away from that sensor?
I grew up in Boston, so the driving here continues to baffle me, and I just prefer not to do it.
Shout out to the city for including bicyclists being able to trigger those sensors, though, because I remember a time in Portland where it would take like 3 or 4 of us biking on the sensors to try to get a left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they have like a visual sensor where if they, you know, if you're in the box, the bike box, they're like, all right, make a left or whatever. So, but yeah. I don't think, you know what's funny? I just don't think enough people know about these sensors. Like, I think a lot of new drivers or just like people are not, they just don't know. And it's like, yeah, the reason you got to pull up all the way is because you're literally triggering a sensor for them.
I don't think I knew about them until this call.
Okay.
Oh my god.
That's why she was so quiet, guys.
Gonna
That's
let
why
it
she
go.
was so quiet.
So maybe I'm the asshole because I was the person in the car that they're writing in about, telling my kids something about whether or not we could listen to the Wicked soundtrack again, and instead not realizing I was properly
Lillian, it was actually I who in Buffoonery, and I heard all about it, and this was just actually an intervention for you.
This was actually, yeah. I've been
Okay, guys.
snitched on.
Here is another one. Dogs Everywhere by Pixar Moms. There are still dogs in every bar and cafe blocking access, barking for no reason, leaving hair on the furniture, and smelling weird. Why is this normalized? And then they got a like, by Many Steak, who wrote, or even in outdoor spaces. If your dog is not well behaved or is super anxious, scared of things, why are you bringing it to loud, crowded spaces? I saw a dog at the Cherry Bombs game last night that looked so scared, and its person was just dragging it along. I felt so bad for that poor baby. So what do you guys think?
Snitch on them.
Snitch.
Animal
Snitch on
control,
who?
snitch on them. These people be treating their dogs crazy. Your dog does not need to come to the bar with you. Your dog does not need to come to the game with you. Like, there are dog parks. There, walk your dog. And what? I'm snitching on them. I'm snitching.
I just don't care. I just and like they're so like, I mean, I don't think you should bring like a dangerous animal who's actually potentially biting people. But like beyond that, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like you do you with your dog. I just feel like you want to get me passionate and angry. Let's talk about like school policy, right? Like I can't, your dog's at the bar, like, cool, man, like happy for you. I don't know. I I just cannot get worked up about stuff like that.
Brianna, what about you?
This happened to me. Yes, I was with my kid at the park, I don't know, a few days ago. And it's a park you're supposed to have your dog on a leash because we're all coexisting in this space.
Because we live in a society.
In a society.
Yes.
And this dude's got a huge husky and he's rambunctious. And my kid's 11 years old. He's, I don't know, like 4 feet tall. He's a small child. And loves dogs, walked up to the dog, and the dog snapped at my kid. Unleashed, snapped at my kid. And my kid like, whoa. And then I walk up and I'm like, bro, leash laws. And he like, and walks away. As if like I'm the dickhead for saying, I think your dog wants to eat my kid. Can we
he was the
get in
asshole.
front of that somehow?
Yeah. I just feel like in the greater Portland scheme of things, I feel like Pixar moms, it was very brave of her to give this opinion because this is a dog town.
I agree.
You know what I mean? But I 100% am on the side of the person who was like, hey, in outdoor spaces, like leash your dog. And if they're not well behaved or if they're anxious, don't bring them. And I just feel like a lot of Portlanders are forcing this relationship on the dog that doesn't exist. It's like, you're running errands with me. You're coming to a sports game with me.
Yeah.
We don't need dog. Your Chihuahua does not need to come to brunch. It's fine. They'll be fine.
Well, you guys, thank you for playing. I love this thread. If you guys are curious, there's a bunch more. They're all in all caps. It makes me so happy to see Portlanders just like emoting and getting it off their chest and not being passive about it. But thank you so much, you guys, for hanging with me today, going through some headlines, playing along with this new segment. And I appreciate you both. Thank you. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our production team this week was John Atariani, Julia Fiaioni, Rachel Monahan, Jesse Wiza, Laura Sitsui, and myself. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos, and additional music by All the Kimonos. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah, the instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. We're going to have a special U.S. trivia episode of CityCast's new show, Your City Could Be Better, tomorrow. But we'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.